Well, hey everybody, I'm Caris Snider. I want to thank the Wallace State Campus Ministries and the schools for allowing me to be here with you today to talk about mental health, to talk about anxiety, to talk about depression, and some practical things that you can do to respond to that anxiety in good, healthy ways. It does not matter what stage of life you're in right now, what age you are, what season you're in. All of these strategies are going to be things that you can do, that you can use in your life to respond to those anxious thoughts and anxious feelings. Now, I want to tell you a story. There was a little girl who was in first grade. She went to her class one day, and a fellow classmate came up to her and said, "What's wrong with you? Why do you look like that? Why do you do that?" And this little 6-year-old girl had no idea that anything was wrong with her. She had no idea that anything was going on in her life that caused her to be physically different. But on that day, in her first grade class, it changed everything for her. And I love that we have a little fellow animal friend here joining us. Yes, I do. So as he gathered the class around her, she bit her lip, she fought back her tears, and realized that, yes, she was different. Well, I was that little girl. And when my fellow classmate made me realize that I was not like everyone else, it crushed me. My parents, I was born with a mild form of cerebral palsy. And so my parents did not want me to think that anything was wrong with me, that just because I had a disability, that did not get to define my ability and how I live my life. So because of that, they did not treat me any differently from my twin brother. They treated us exactly the same. So knowing that as I walked into that class and as he gathered everyone around me, holding his arms up the way I held my left arm up, hopping around me like a bunny rabbit, to feel that sting of being bullied and being rejected early on as a 6-year-old, I unfortunately taught myself how to deal with hard things and to deal with struggles by not dealing with them, by hiding, by pushing down the pain, ignoring it, pretending like nothing happened. And I can remember when I went home that day, I did not tell my parents. I did not tell the teachers. I felt like if I tell, what if it makes it worse? What if no one believes me? What if others join in with him and pick on me? What if it causes me to be pointed out even more? And in those moments, if any of you have ever experienced being bullied or rejected, you don't want to be pointed out. You want to hide and blend in as much as you can. So I didn't tell. And I hid it. And I remember going to bed that night and my heart would race and I was very scared about going back to school the next day. Those what ifs, what if this happens again? What if others really do join in with him? So I remember those racing thoughts. But I also remember early on in that pathway, I also decided that I would only do things in my life that I knew I could do well, that I would be successful at. And I began to put this expectation of perfection on myself. Don't fail. Don't make a mistake. Get it right on your test, on your assignments. Because I didn't want to let anyone else down and I just wanted to blend in and I didn't want to be picked on again. So that is how I began to live my life, to try to avoid that bullying from happening again. Well, in 5th grade, another fellow student, he decided to pick on me as well because I would always want to answer the questions in class, raise my hand, not make a mistake, get all the grades right. So he would follow me. He would pick on me. He would look for ways to make me feel uncomfortable. And I told no one. I didn't ask for help. I continued to push it down and pretend like everything was great. Everything was fine. And then one day I woke up with a terrible migraine headache. Now, have any of you ever experienced migraine headaches before? If you have, you know that they are very painful. And I woke up that day and my vision was very blurry. I could see straight ahead like I'm looking at many of you right now. But that peripheral vision that I had felt like I was seeing stars. And that scared me as a 10-year-old. So I did tell my mom and dad that, and my mom took me to the doctor. And as he sat there talking with me, asking me questions about my symptoms of what I was experiencing, he then asked, he said, "Hey, Caris, is anybody picking on you? Are they making fun of you?" And out of nowhere, I began to cry. It was like I could not push anything down any longer. And it gave me permission to release what was really happening, what was really going on. And I began to share with the doctor, with my mom for the first time, what was really going on. And interestingly enough, as I shared, my vision began to come back. And that pain and that headache began to feel better. So the doctor was talking to me and he said, hey, listen, what you're dealing with is something called anxiety. Well, great. I was so glad to know this is something real. There is really something going on. But back then, 20 plus years ago, I will not reveal my age, but back then, we didn't talk about anxiety. We didn't talk about mental struggles. So he didn't really tell me this is some ways that you can respond to the anxiety, to what you are dealing with. So I continue to respond in the same way, with putting that pressure of perfection on myself, with pushing it down, hiding it, not dealing with it. And by the time I was a senior in high school, yes, I was top 5 in my class, but I had overwhelmed myself, filling my schedule with as many things as possible to do because I didn't want to fail anyone. And I wanted to be pleasing in everyone's sight. And I didn't want to make a mistake. So I put the expectation of straight A's on myself, nothing less. I put the expectation on myself to constantly be studying, to earn all the scholarships. Because growing up, you got 2 kids going to school. My dad was the only one that worked. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. Financially, they could not afford to send 2 kids to school. So instead of talking to them about those pressures, I just held it all in on myself. And my brother was driving us to school one day, and it was mounting. It was the end of the year. I had to get my breakfast on the go. So I had my orange juice, and I had my, back then, trendy cargo pants on. And my breakfast was in my lap, and he hit a bump in the road, and orange juice went all over my clothes. And I started to cry. I just had a complete meltdown. My brother had no idea what was going on. He went into school and I got back in the driver's seat and I drove myself home. By the time I got into college, still not letting anyone in to know that all of these things were going on and were happening in my life. I went from being the student who was making the A's and tutoring others to being the one who was making C's and needing the tutor. And I had no idea how to respond. I did not have the coping skills to know how to manage life in that way. I didn't know that over 75% of mental struggles are going to hit between 18 and 24. I had no idea all of these things. And so I continued on into college, just barely making it, barely surviving. And by the time I hit an adult and I was married, I couldn't hide it anymore. Those anxiety attacks, those pains that I was feeling, it would be like out of nowhere. I might be driving down the road, might be going to the grocery store, maybe going to church or going to see a friend. My heart would just beat out of my chest. And I thought I was having a heart attack while I was driving down the road. Or it may be when I would go to sleep at night, my thoughts would just race. They would march in place, one right after the other, of all the what ifs, all the disasters that could happen to me, to my children, to my family, or to my friends. The thoughts of being less. It was a loop of less in my mind. You are hopeless, useless, worthless, and you are purposeless. That's where I found myself. So then the anxiety moved from a place of always being kind of froggy and feeling on edge to a place of dread and depression. And I lived in a constant fog. And I thought I was the only one. Terrified to let anyone in, terrified to let anyone know, because if they did, would they reject me? Would they turn their back on me? Would they think differently of me? And so as I begin to continue to have these pains of these anxiety attacks, feeling breathless or my thoughts running through my mind, I really, instead of dealing with the pain, I really just wanted to numb it. I just wanted it to go away. And people will use different things to numb their pain. If you've struggled with anxiety or dealt with any of this recently, maybe you're thinking through this through your head. Some people will use inappropriate relationships, mindless scrolling of hours on social media, losing themselves in video games, isolating away. It may be drugs, alcohol. For me, it was food. To numb the pain, I wanted to starve it. So I starved the pain. I didn't eat. I drank multiple gallons of water a day, ate less than 1,000 calories a day, and I would just work out multiple hours, just trying to numb the pain, trying to not feel what I was feeling, because I thought what I was feeling was wrong, and I thought that what I was feeling was not normal. And so I tried so hard to numb it and to be that master of the mask, to look like everything was perfect, to look like I had the perfect home life, but inside I was crushed by the numbing feelings that I felt. And it did finally catch up to me, and I went to the doctor one day having an anxiety attack on the middle of my couch in our living room. It was a beige, tiny couch. I had never felt the pain that I was experiencing, and I thought, this is it. My 2-year-old is going to walk in here at any moment and find her mommy on the floor. So I did call my mom, who is a safe person for me, and I said, Mom, I don't know what's going on. I think I'm dying. I think I'm having a heart attack. She told me to go to the doctor, and for me, even at that age that I was at, I knew not to argue with my mother and to do what she told me to do. So I did go to the doctor, and they hooked me up to an EKG machine, and I remember thinking, man, I'm such a burden. I'm such a burden to these nurses. I'm such a burden to my family. And all I did was say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I'll never forget the nurse that helped me that day. And she said to me, you are not a burden, and I'm here to help you. I never knew how much I would need to know those words, but I needed them then, and I continue to go back to them to know that asking for help is not the wrong thing to do, and it is not a weakness. And as they begin to help me, and as I begin to realize that it was anxiety that I was dealing with, that it is in fact a very real thing, that anxiety and depression affect 1 out of 4 adults right now, that I wasn't alone in my struggle. But I did hit the bottom of the bottom, and I did think that I was not needed here, that I was more of a burden to those in my life than I was a help. And I thought that everyone would be better off without me here, that I just needed to leave this earth and be gone. And in that moment of hitting the bottom, for me personally, it was as if God met me there and said, look up. Look up. You're not alone, and you are needed here. You're needed here. And I want to pause and say to you, if you are feeling alone and you have hit the bottom, look up. Look up. You're not alone, and you are needed. And what you are feeling and experiencing with anxiety or depression, it is a very real thing. But the good news is that there is real ways to deal with it. There are real ways for you to get help and to overcome. And what I found in that is that I can move out of that less space and move to full. That I wasn't hopeless, I was hopeful. And that is the same for you. You are hopeful. You are not useless. You are useful. You are not purposeless. You are purposeful. And you're not worthless. You are full of worth. You're full of worth. And we need you. You are listening here today for a reason. And you need to know that today, deep down in your spirit, that there is a reason that you are walking this earth. Yes, it may be hard right now. Yes, there is a struggle, but there is hope, and that is the good news. And so I believed some lies. I believed that I was the only one. I believed that that struggle was just me. I didn't know that other adults were going through it, as I said earlier. I didn't know that anxiety and depression affects almost 300 million adults worldwide, and that means 18 and above, that it is a struggle for so many. You think to yourself, it's just me. I was going through and I was reading some quotes. Billie Eilish, she admitted on an interview back in 2019 that she thought she wouldn't make it to age 17. And right now, Taylor Swift, she has a new album out. I'm sure many of you have listened to the Midnight's album, and she talks quite a bit about her mental health struggle and depression and her own personal struggles, even with self-sabotage. In her song, Anti-Hero, the lyrics and some of that song say, I have this thing where I get older, but just never wiser. Midnights become my afternoon when my depression works the graveyard shift. All the people I've ghosted stand there in the room. And then if you know the chorus, it goes in to say, it's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. We think that we are the problem. And we don't realize that having those problems are normal. Ryan Reynolds, a famous actor, he said, to all those like me who overschedule, overthink, overwork, overworry, over everything, please know that you're not alone. And then a quote from C.S. Lewis, who has passed away in the early 60s, so this quote is almost 60 years old. He said, mental pain is less traumatic than physical pain, but it is more common and also more hard to bear. The frequent attempt to conceal mental pain increases the burden. It is easier to say, my tooth is aching, than to say, my heart is broken. We've had these struggles with mental health for years, hundreds and hundreds of years. So there are some quotes on it, but let's look at some numbers. Let's look at what's really going on, specifically with you guys, the college students. The American College Health Association says that depression and anxiety are the leading cause hindering academic performances for our college students. And then that depression can lead to substance abuse if it is not dealt with. An article from CNN, this came out in March of 23. 2 out of 5 undergraduate students, including nearly half of female students, frequently experience emotional stress in college, and 40% have considered dropping out because of the stress and overwhelm that they are feeling. This was an analysis done by the Kaiser Family Foundation, and it shows that half of 18 to 24-year-olds have reported anxiety and depression symptoms in 2023. 1 in 7 have had thoughts of suicidal ideation. This was from Timely MD, which is a virtual health service provider. It was a survey that found 50% of college students identified mental health as their top stressor in 2023. 71% surveyed indicated that their struggles were mainly with stress, anxiety, and depression. 6 out of 10 college students right now are overwhelmed with anxiety. 40% crippled with depression. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for this age group. It is a very real struggle and a very real problem. And then for us sitting here as adults, 1 in 4 adults are dealing with some form of anxiety, from mild to severe. We're all going to face it at some point in our life. It could be anxiety over tests, over exams. It could be anxiety over changes that are happening within a family situation, within a work environment. It could be a trauma that you have faced. Anxiety and depression is no respecter of person, socioeconomic background. It will get whoever that it can. So it is not just you. And it's not that you're doing something wrong. It is something normal that happens. It is a struggle that can affect so many. And as I was preparing to come and talk, and maybe many of you, if you go back and you think about your college years when you were even getting out of high school, moving into the workforce, all of those stressors that happen in that moment. You go into a new environment. You're leaving away from home for the first time. Maybe you're going into a college where none of your friends are coming with you. None of mine went with me. It is change. Change is hard for all of us. Even now, as adults, if we were to be honest, we could probably still say we still struggle with change at times. Your class load, your money, your financial situation, the stress of what it's going to cause on your guardians or on your parents. Do you get a job? Do you not get a job? What is your major going to be? What are you going to do with your life? Even my 14-year-old right now said, Mom, I have to pick my whole pathway for high school, and I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And I had to tell her, hey, that's okay. It's not wrong to not know. Maybe you don't know right now. Maybe you, like many college students, you're on your second or third major, but you're still not sure. There's the pressure of perfection. Don't fail. Don't make a mistake. Isolating, taking care of yourself. You feel overwhelmed. Sleep. You're probably like, what is sleep? I don't know what sleep is. And maybe you've become friends with energy drinks and the blue light from your screen. And that's how you live your life. It's a lot. I didn't even read the whole list of things that I wrote that you are facing. You go, as we were talking about earlier, from being a child to others making decisions for you to instantly you are an adult and you're expected to make decisions. And you may wonder to yourself, is this right? Am I doing the right thing? What if I mess up? All of those things are normal. This anxiety that you might be feeling, I want you to know that it's normal. It's a normal part of life, but we don't want that anxiety to take over your life and paralyze you and guide your life. What we want to do is take back control so that we can kind of be the boss of our life, be the boss of our brain, and decide what we're doing and where we're going, and knowing that even if we might not get the decisions right every time, that'll be okay, because we're human and we're going to make mistakes, but it will be used for good in our life. So we've heard story, you've heard statistics, and now you may be asking yourself, all this is great. I'm thankful to know I'm not alone. I'm glad to know these things happen and they're very real, but what do I do? How can I respond? As a college student, as an adult, you might be saying, is it too late? Is it too late to make these changes? And it's not. It's not too late. You can create strategies in your life right now to cope with anxiety in a real and healthy way. Now, anxiety, if you have seen, there are multiple definitions of anxiety. It is a physiological response from your brain that thinks you're in danger. You're not in danger. You're in a safe place, but the way the brain is reading the situation is that it thinks you're in danger. You may be overly nervous or overly afraid about what might happen. Nothing has happened, but you're constantly living in this thought process of being nervous and worried all the time about the future and what could happen to those around you. It's a reaction to a scary thought. And the amazing thing about your brain is that its job is to protect you. That's the brain's job. So because of that, it treats a real threat and the thought of a threat exactly the same. It cannot tell the difference because its job is to keep you alive. So when that happens, if there's a real threat, that's great. When that fight or flight response kicks in, where your amygdala is, where the emotional part of your brain is, we need that. A few weeks ago, we live in a new house, and my dog was barking, and I go look out the window, and y'all, there was a snake going through my backyard. And my fight or flight response kicked in real quick because I am not a fan. So if I would have been outside, that would have been great. I would have been able to get to safety. But what happens when the brain misinterprets the situation, and you don't need that fight or flight response? And you have this super fuel, is what they call it, kind of raging through your body, and you don't need it because you're not in danger. So then it may cause you to feel these anxiety symptoms. It could be things like a pounding heartbeat. You feel breathless. You feel like it's shortness of breath, like you can't get a good breath. You are sweaty, your palms are sweaty, maybe your forehead is sweaty, you feel nauseous, you feel dizzy, you have headaches, maybe you feel some numbing, your thoughts are constantly racing, you have sleepless nights, you're very fidgety. All of those things can happen. You're overly emotional, you have overly emotional outbursts, and you can't really explain why. It may be of tears or it may be of anger, but you're not really sure why. All of these things can happen, these symptoms can happen when that fight or flight is triggered and you don't need it. And that can trigger that anxiety response. And so when we live in that place where that switch is constantly on and we're constantly living in anxiety, then that's where that paralyzing feeling can take over. And that may be where we need to pause and say, hey, I need to make some changes. I need to do some things differently. So I'm going to share several strategies with you. If you are watching the live stream or you go back and watch the recording, feel free to pause and take notes and write these things down. These are going to be several. There are many. I'm going to share some that I have used that have been helpful for me and a lot of the ones that are common for others. But I do want to make sure I say this. If you have been struggling with anxiety or depression for weeks now, even months, where it is affecting your day-to-day life, you're not able to do things just daily on your daily routine, this could be your body telling you, hey, we need help. We need additional help. We need a doctor. We need a counselor. We need to talk to a therapist. So I want you to know that is the right thing to do. If you are having heart issues, diabetes, asthma, you would go do those things to take care of that part of your body. So that could be your brain telling you, I need help. I need some extra help. So that's not wrong. That is the right and healthy thing to do. So I want to make sure that we pause and address that, because if it is something that has been going on too long, then your body is trying to get your attention to say, we need additional resources. We need additional people who are professionals in this matter and that can help us. A counselor and a doctor helped save my life. And I thank God for them every day. So just know that that is something that you need to do if your body is giving you that warning. Okay, so practical strategies. Again, these are things that you can do no matter your age. We can help our brain build new pathways in how to respond to anxiety and teach our brain how to do things differently. I love that we can do that. First and foremost, the very first thing that we need to do is to acknowledge and stop avoiding. We got to acknowledge and stop avoiding what is really happening and what is really going on. Be honest with yourself. Do you feel anxious if it's test anxiety? Is it social anxiety? Is it just general anxiety about everyday things where you're constantly worried about everyday things? Is it something that could be going on within your work environment that really no one knows about? Maybe you have some anxiety going back home to your home environment. Maybe you have found that while you're here, you're in a safe place, you're in a place that offers you routine, but you have some anxiety about going back home because that's not what you had when you left. So we want to acknowledge and we want to be honest about where we are. If you think about a race, if you think about runners, they all have a starting point. If there was no starting point, they would not know the direction to get to the finish line. So that's what acknowledgement does for us. It allows us to know which direction we're going. And it's funny, I always tell students when I go into schools and we talk about avoiding avoidance. And they look at me like, Caris, you just said the same word twice. So what I mean by that is avoid avoidance. What we tend to do sometimes, and I will put myself in there as well, we've taught ourselves to procrastinate, to wait till the last minute on a project, on an assignment, if we know what our deadline is, maybe our deadline is this day, well, we wait till the day before to do the project, and we've taught our brain to do that. And so we'll avoid because we're afraid we're going to fail, we're afraid we're going to make a mistake, we don't understand the project that we've been given, so we just don't do it. So what you can do instead of avoiding those things is shift your behavior and step back and say, okay, where in my schedule can I block 30 minutes to study? This many days. My test is in 3 days, so I can block 30 minutes to study on these days. Block out your time and do small amounts. Gradually expose yourself to those things, because then you're going to begin to teach your brain how to respond differently. And then when the project comes and it's the deadline, you're not going to feel overwhelmed. Those outbursts are not going to happen. You're not going to panic and think the world is ending. You're going to be prepared. You're going to be confident, and you're going to know, hey, this felt much better than waiting to the last minute, getting it done, and maybe even getting it done earlier. So that's another way that we want to avoid avoidance, and we want to avoid hiding those things. So one thing that has been very helpful for athletes, use this practical strategy quite a bit, and that is simply pausing and taking good deep breaths. So why do that? Well, when you pause and take good deep breaths, what it allows you to do, especially if you're feeling your heart racing and you feel breathless, it allows your brain to calm down and move out of that emotional part that's trying to take control and move you into the thinking part of your brain where you do make rational decisions. When we make decisions out of our emotions, they're not always the best, right? Because when our emotions take over, we're not thinking clearly. So when we pause and take those deep breaths, it allows us to think clearly about a situation, about decisions that we need to make. It gives you space to take the time that you need to make, maybe about a decision as you move out of Wallace, maybe to a new college, maybe to a new career. When those emotions come over you and you wonder, is this going to be the right thing? Pausing and taking those deep breaths allows you to have more clarity of thought, more space to think about it, more time to know that you can make the decision. You just need to give your brain that moment to pause. So we're going to try this. I am an interactive person when I speak, so as you're listening or even here in the audience, just feel free just to close your eyes for the moment. And on the count of 3, I'm going to ask you to inhale through your nose and then exhale through your mouth, okay? And again, do this as you're watching the live stream. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth. One more time, inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth. One more time, inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth. All right, you can open your eyes. This is a simple thing that you can use even if you have some exams left to take. Pause and take those deep breaths so that you can think clearly about your answers before a presentation that you might have to give at work, or maybe you're going to have a conversation maybe with a boss coming up and you feel a little anxious about that. Pause and take those deep breaths so that you can walk in and know that you can have good conversations with them, you can make the decisions, and you can do well on that test. Another thing that is really helpful for you that your physical body has already built in. We already have a lot of these. I love that we already have these God-given natural things that we can do. It is a technique called grounding. Grounding is when you use your senses to snap you back into your reality. A lot of times with anxiety, it deals with our thoughts. We're dealing with future thoughts, going into worst case scenario. What if I pick the wrong thing? What if my friends leave me out? What if I never find a spouse? What if I can't find a job? All these what ifs, right? And so when that happens, we begin to, it's almost like we play a movie in our head, and by the time the movie ending credits gets to us, we are in panic mode and nothing has happened. But in our brain, it feels like it has. So we don't want to get into the future. We want to stay grounded in our present reality. So a way that you can do that if you feel those racing thoughts is look for what are 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can taste, 1 thing you can smell. By the time you work through all 5 senses, you are back into reality. You're back where your feet are, basically. So that's where we want to be. We want to be in our present moment because that's what we can control. There are a lot of future things that we think of that are really out of our control. So when you ground yourself, it allows you to be back in that present moment, to think on those things and to think on, okay, what is something I can control? I can control my response to the situation, I can control my attitude, and I can control my habits. So that helps keep you in that spot. And as you move through grounding, something else that can help you with those anxious thoughts is journaling. Journaling is a powerful thing that many experts are studying as we write, what it does to our brain and to the gray matter of our brain. It really kind of helps the brain focus and to calm down when it feels wired. And so journaling is not just something for just young girls to do when they are teenagers. It's for all of us to do. It allows us to empty ourselves of those negative thoughts, those negative emotions that are trying to take over our life. One thing that they have discovered with our thoughts, this is the National Science Foundation, 80% of our thoughts are negative. 80% of our thoughts are negative. 95% of those are repetitive. So you are repeating a negative loop without even realizing it in your mind. Our brain just tends to naturally want to go to that negative slant, and we have thousands upon thousands of thoughts a day. So what journaling does is it brings some awareness. It allows you to be mindful of the thoughts that are going in to your mind, what you're thinking about yourself, what you're thinking about a situation, what are those what ifs that you're thinking. So by practicing journaling, what you can do, and no one has to see this, and it can be, I use cheap notebooks that I buy from Walmart. Just write, as those thoughts come down, write them down. Get them all out of your head. You don't have to worry. This is not a paper you're turning in for English or submitting. Don't worry about punctuation or spelling. Just get it out. You want to get those negative things out. And then one thing that you can do if you are a visual person is to physically rip those pieces of paper out and throw them in the garbage. Rip them up, throw them in the garbage. If you like to type notes on your phone, type it into your phone in the notes section and delete that note. Get rid of it. but then you want to replace it. So look for positive affirmation statements. It could be, for some of you, it's Bible verses. It could be positive statements that you have found on the internet. You've done a search and you found those things. Write those down in the journal. Put it on sticky notes and put it in your car. Put it on your mirror to remind yourself of those good things about yourself, because there are good things in all of you to remember. Maybe it is for you to put that you are hopeful. You are useful. You are purposeful. Put those statements where you can see it, so that that anxiety, those negative thoughts no longer get to dictate your life and what you are destined to do. Because sometimes our thoughts stop us. We'll have the thought, we'll have the emotion, and it leads to the behavior. We'll have those negative thoughts that'll lead to anxiety or fear, and then that leads to a behavior of maybe not pursuing future goals, not pursuing career things, not pursuing things that are healthy for you. So your thoughts are very powerful. So we want to get those under control. Just a few more to share with you. Gratitude, going from thoughts to gratitude. Gratitude is this built-in natural anxiety blocker. Gratitude means what we're thankful for, what we have to be thankful for in our life. And the way gratitude works, our brain cannot be anxious or thankful at the same time. It cannot do it. So when you are intentionally looking for the good in your life, not pretending that there's no bad, but intentionally looking for the good, it blocks those anxious thoughts. It blocks that anxiety from coming in and taking over. And when I go into elementary schools and middle schools, even in high school, I'll challenge the students. I'm like, okay, tell me some things that you're thankful for. And kids, students, you guys are great at this. They come up with the best things. They'll say, I'm thankful for my rabbits. I'm thankful for my pets. I'm thankful for my grandparents. One little boy said, I'm thankful that I don't have to share a bathroom with my sister. And I have 2 girls. I get it. I totally understand. One boy said he was thankful for his Xbox. Some will say, I'm thankful for my parents. A 3rd grade boy told me, he said, Miss Caris, I'm thankful that I'm alive. I was like, wow, what perspective. And I'll never forget recently being in a classroom of 8th graders, 14-year-olds. And I said, okay, guys, I want you to think and tell me one thing, just one, that you're thankful for, that you're grateful for. So, starting out, I have a middle schooler, so I totally get it. They were saying a lot of things to be silly and try to get attention, right? Which was fine because it got the conversation going. But then a young man raised his hand. He was an athlete. You could tell that a lot of the students liked to be around him, hang around him. And he raised his hand and he said, I'm thankful for the foster family that I have right now because they're nice to me. And we all paused and realized, wow, they had no idea. They had no idea. But he was truly grateful for those people in his life. So I don't know if this will work, but I'm going to give us just about 30 seconds. And I know pauses on live stream are not the greatest thing in the world. So I'm going to talk a little bit here while we do this. But what are you thankful for? And if you're watching on live stream and it gives you the opportunity to type on the screen, type it out. I always tell people I'm thankful for coffee. I need coffee in the morning. That is one thing that I am thankful for. And of course, I am thankful for my family. But what about you guys? What is one thing that you're thankful for that you might be willing to say out loud? And again, feel free to type it on the screen.
My boys.
Your boys. Children, yeah. Yes.
I'm thankful for sitting here.
For sitting here. That is awesome. Yes. Anyone else? Diet Mountain Dew. I've never had Diet Mountain Dew. I might need to try this one. That's great. Did I see another hand? I thought I saw, yes.
Just being able to study and be proactive and not worry about the finals that have this week.
That's great. Just being able to study and be proactive and not worry about your finals this week. Here's the thing about gratitude. When you practice gratitude, if you notice, even in this room right now, people sat up, smiles went on faces, the whole atmosphere in the room changed just by thinking of one thing or hearing one thing that people have. to be grateful for. That is the power of gratitude. So practice that once a day. When you get up in the morning, one thing that you're thankful for. When you go to bed at night, what was one thing that you're thankful for? And you know what? Your gratitude may be, I'm thankful that my situation didn't get worse. That's fair, and that's honest. Physical care, you've got to take care of ourselves. I just joked about how I was thankful for caffeine. Here's the thing about physical care, we need water. And unfortunately, the water in coffee does not count, and that bums me out. But your body needs water. Your body needs rest, and it needs movement. And I know that finals can be stressful, work projects can be stressful, but we've got to make margin in our life to take care of our body. If you read a book, you'll notice the words do not fill the entire page from top to bottom. There is margin to give your eyes room to process what it's reading. So if a book has margin, we need margin in our life. We need margin where we're saying no, where we're leaving pockets of time to take care of ourselves. So work on drinking more water. If you're like, there's no way I can drink 64 ounces of water a day, work on your way to get there. Sleep, we need about 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Progress, okay? So we're taking little steps to get there. And then movement, 20 minutes of movement a day builds up those endorphins that help you to feel good. You've got to take care of your physical body, because if we don't, it will lead you to exhaustion. It can lead you to feeling more anxious and more depressed. Media, social media, I can't leave without talking about that. Social media has gotten us into some very anxious places. Our media, if you watch the news today, there's a lot going on. There is. There's just a lot going on in our world right now, anywhere that you look. In social media as well, if you're on there, you're just mindlessly scrolling. What we tend to do is compare our behind the scenes to others' filtered highlight reels. It's not a fair comparison. Social media companies intentionally are very on purpose with how they run their platforms. They have studied the brain. They know that we have a part of our brain called our reward center that kicks out dopamine, that makes us feel good. And so the way they run their platforms is the more that you scroll, the constant hit of dopamine you get, so that you don't leave their platforms. And so that, yes, that we do become addicted to those platforms. And you might even notice when you get off of social media, you feel kind of low, feel kind of distant, like your thoughts are kind of gone awry. But while you're on it, you feel good. You feel a high. That's all intentional. So because of that, because our brain is getting a constant flow of dopamine, it doesn't know how to respond correctly. So there is a doctor, her name is Dr. Ann Lemke, and she says that to give our brain the right reset to pump out dopamine on a good and healthy level, she says that we need to take a 30-day break from social media. 30 days. Could you do it? Could I do it? I've gone 7 days. I'd be honest with you, I don't know if I could do 30 days. But maybe start with one 24-hour break. Turn off social media, turn off the news, and just give your brain a break. And be present. Be where your feet are. Be in those moments. And by doing that, you're going to allow your brain to reset and have a break. A couple other things with social media. That blue light that is coming off of those screens from our phones and computers, it's blocking the melatonin production that we need to go to sleep. So what we need, scientists suggest, is that we need to be off of those electronics at least an hour before bedtime, because it allows your brain to calm down, it allows you to settle, and it helps you to go to sleep. So those are a few things that you can do when it comes to media and social media. And I will say this, if you are following people on social media that make you feel less than, and you're comparing yourself to them, and you always feel worse when you're reading their information, unfollow them. Don't follow them anymore, because they're not feeding you, they're not encouraging you, they're not offering you inspiration. And that would be something that I would encourage you. Anything that's pouring negative in your life, I would get rid of that. Last one, community. We're not meant to do life alone. You're not meant to do life alone. I know sometimes it may feel isolating while you're studying for finals, or while you're getting ready for things, or while you're working on a project for work, but we are to do life together. Galatians 6:2 says that we are to bear one another's burdens. So you don't have to bear your burdens and your friends' burdens and your family's burdens all alone. Let others help you bear the burden. Michelle Obama said, we need to have courage to reach out and have tough conversations with our friends and family members to get help for ourselves when we need it. So I want to encourage you to have that courage today. Have those tough conversations when you need to talk to someone. Who are those safe people in your life that you can go to and say, hey, today's a hard day. I'm struggling today. I don't know if I'm prepared for that test today. I don't know what the boss is going to say to me today. Who are those people that you can talk to in your life? Who can hold you accountable so that when you go to them and you share maybe the anxious thoughts that you're having, they will listen, but then they're going to push you into the right direction and say, okay, what can we do differently to help you move forward? We need community in our life. And in closing, I was watching an audio, not an audio, it was like a social media video several years ago. And it was of this young dance group, little girls, probably 3 or 4 years old, ballerinas. And they had come out onto the stage for their recital. You know, those are the ones that everyone loves to watch, those cute, as they get out there to do their little song. And the little girls started dancing, all except one. And she panicked because she saw the size of this crowd, which, can we blame her? I cannot blame her. She panicked and she began to cry. And the girls continued to dance around her. And all of a sudden, you see this big, burly guy come running out there. He had athletic shorts on. He had massive muscles. His hat was on backwards. And in that moment, you knew it was her dad. And instead of picking her up and taking her off the stage, he grabbed her hand and he did the dance with her. He began to do the motions with her, and you can hear the laughter in the audience, and you can see the little girl look up to him to be reassured. Am I okay? Is this okay? And he said, come on, keep going. And he's doing the little twirls around with his little hand on his head like everybody else. And then all of a sudden, you see this little girl begin to let go of his hand. And she has the confidence to finish the dance. And you see the dad slowly move to the side of the stage. And I love that because what it reminded me of is that you are going to face difficult things. You're going to face hard situations, and I can't in good conscience in this video and try to tell you that your life is going to be rainbows and unicorns. It's not. But when you face those hard things, when you face those situations, you need those people in your life who are not going to try to take you away from it, but they're going to stand by your side and help you face it and go through it. To finish the dance, to live a life fulfilled. And you need those people there who you can look to and say, is this right? Am I doing okay? That they're going to cheer you on and say, yes, keep going. And you need these strategies in your life that you can use, that you can remember to practice, not just when you're anxious, but even now when you're not. That deep breathing, gratitude, journaling, changing your thoughts, talking to your community, acknowledging where you are. Using the grounding techniques, all of these things are going to help you when those anxious thoughts and those anxious moments come. So I want to thank everybody again for just coming today, for being part of the live stream. If you want more information about me or the books that I have, you can go to my website, carissnider.com. I think there's going to be a link in there for you guys to know that. If you ever want to reach out to me and ask me questions, feel free to do so. I love to have these conversations and be a part of the journey with you. Again, I want to thank Wallace State for allowing me to be here today. Thank you for your time and coming today. And with that, I'm going to wish you well, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.